I was out of my body, and I really felt the presence of God, and I felt the presence of peace like I have never experienced. I experienced love in a way that words cannot do its justice. I'll just say it had a profound effect on my knowing that I was a loving spiritual being. I felt bright and shiny, non-human, but my soul, I felt my soul there. And being loved by other souls was remarkable.
Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Let's Talk Near Death podcast, where we talk about life, death, and experiences in between. Now, today's episode, this is one of the very few times that I'm recording the introduction after I've done the recording, purely because today's episode was so interesting. We had so many things go weird. Time zones got mixed up where both of our calendars had the right time, but it wasn't showing. There are times within this episode where I'm on mute, but I'm not on mute. So I'm talking away and nothing's happening, but I haven't got the mute icon on. You'll know what I'm talking about if you're familiar with Zoom. We then had a power cut where I lost our guest halfway through the episode. We had internet disruptions, so many things that took place in this one. So I decided that, flag that, we'll just come back and I'll do the introduction at the end after we've had our conversation. The other really exciting thing is that I really felt led for some of season 11 to be talking about near-death communication. I sat down and I said, what is it that I need to do for this season? Send me the right people. I always want the right people to come at the right times. And I felt very strongly that we need to talk about after-death communication. We've got some very exciting speakers lined up. Some of them names you're very familiar to you, other ones not so much. And so as I went about trying to find people who could talk about this topic, the lady who I'm speaking to today really stood out to me. And I was thinking, I don't know why. I do not know why I feel very strongly to talk to her. However, when we got on to recording our episode today, turns out she's also had a near-death experience. So the stars aligned. I trusted. I went with what I felt. We had some issues, but I think today is going to be quite an interesting conversation. It is one that is slightly outside of the scope of what we normally talk about. It's different to our one-to-one interview style. We talk about all sorts of things, about spirit communication, about connection, about messages, all sorts of things. And we carry that over into the VIP conversation afterwards, where we talk about whether people know whether they're going to die before they die. So bear with me as we go through today. There may be some edits. There is also some people over the road installing a swimming pool. So we have trucks, we have noise. It really just was quite an interesting day to record. So my guest today is Jennifer Farmer, who is an intuitive medium and spiritual coach. She's a student of the Arthur Findley College in the UK, and she teaches people how to connect with their spirit guides, angels, and loved ones on the other side. Jennifer has been gifted the ability of spirit communication. And like I say, it's a pretty interesting conversation as we get into how this all came about and how she uses this communication. She's also been featured on blogtalkradio.com, the Wellness Expo, the Dr. Pat Show, and she's the author of A Healing Story, How to Heal and Rebuild Your Life After Loss. So Jennifer Farmer, welcome to the Let's Talk Near Death podcast. Quite an exciting morning that we've been having. Tell us, how did you get into this? How did your near-death experience take place?
Sure. It's not one of those things that you plan on, for sure. Mine was actually by accident. I was a bit of a party girl when I was a teenager, and it was a bad mix of drink and a few other things. And, I ended up on the table, in the medical room, and had to have my stomach pumped. And in that time, I crossed to the other side. I don't know exactly how long I was out, but meaning out there instead of here. But what has stuck with me many, many, many years, I will not share my age, but I'm young at heart, you see, it's one of those experiences that I don't talk a lot about because I'm a bit embarrassed because I was a bit responsible for how that happened, just being a party girl. And, I got the gift of going to the other side. And it was one of those things where, kind of through it, I didn't realize I was in the afterlife. I just felt like I was in this beautiful space of light, that I was out of my body, and I really felt the presence of God, and I felt the presence of peace like I have never experienced. And it's kind of like what I share with some of my students is I experienced love in a way that words cannot do its justice. There's really, there's real no, I can say, oh, it's flowers in the field. Yeah, but that may not be fun for everybody. So I'll just say it had a profound effect on my knowing that I was a loving spiritual being, that something in me was lovable and was enough. And I woke up from that experience. And actually, when I was coming to, I was sort of begging the universe, please don't take me back. Please let me stay. Like, I went through this period when I actually awoke. I was crying because I did not want to come back. Yeah. I wanted to stay in that realm because I felt whole. I felt loved. I felt bright and shiny, non-human, but I felt my soul there, and being loved by other souls was remarkable.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's amazing. Were you aware that you were dead during that process?
I was, and because I was floating through the tunnel.
Oh, okay. Tell us about that.
And so, kind of my recollection of it, and, I was going through this tunnel, and even though it wasn't a tunnel, it was a bit of a tunnel, but it felt like this prism of light, golden light. And I felt myself sort of walking towards what felt like God to me. Mm. And it felt like I was coming home. Mm. And that it's a place that I remembered. And a place that once I realized I was it's like I saw the two worlds. And I saw kind of in my mind or my soul's perspective that I was on another realm, and that I was going to have to go back. And I literally was like backing up in this tunnel. No. And, I'm a Southern Baptist girl. I grew up, in church, and, we didn't really talk about death. We only talked about heaven and hell. And, I just feel like for me, it kind of took all the boundaries off of what I thought heaven was going to be. Mm-hmm. And it let me know that I was good enough that I'm going to get to be there. And it was a pivotal moment in my life.
Yeah. Oh, without a doubt, these experiences absolutely are. So you've said there a couple of times, Jennifer, that you were good enough to go back, good enough to return. So mm-hmm. Are you referring to the belief system that you're raised in, that feeling of there's heaven, there's hell, if we're good enough, we go to heaven?
Yep. Yeah. Or if we believe a certain way, if we, at that time, I was, super, my experience with religion was limited to rights and rules and regulations, and, there's one thing I loved about religion, and the fact that I love the idea of having faith. I love the fact that there was a presence among us that loved us, and I just didn't get all the rules that went with it. And so when I was in that space, like, I didn't see a checklist. Like, yep, Jennifer, you da or you got yourself here. Because remember, I was the result of me being there, right? I'm the one that even by accident put myself in, and there was no ridicule, no harm. There was no judgment of me in there. And it was pure love. And I know that we all have that. I know we all can return to that space. I know that it's where we come from. It's where we return to. And I still am what you would consider a religiously spiritual person. I still, it's deep into my faith in things that I found limiting in my life.
Mm. Mm. Wow. That is amazing. My mind is just blown at the moment, as you know. The reason we've got you on here is to talk more about the work that you're doing, more about this after-death communication that is a topic that really comes up. But I'm just so blown away that you've had this near-death experience and that you've got these amazing gifts. So do you think that your abilities to connect with the other side, your intuitive abilities, everything that you're doing, do you think that came out of your near-death experience, or was there some of that beforehand?
I had it beforehand. I always, I'm just one of those kids that, like, I knew what my Christmas presents were going to be before, my parents couldn't put any Christmas presents anywhere near the house because I always found them. I always knew them.
That's a bit disappointing.
I'd always had a sense that, like you're watching TV shows, like I always knew how it was going to end. Or if you're watching a dance contest like American Idol, things like that. It's like, oh, that's the winner, And I wasn't in a family that really talked about the woo-woo stuff, And so I think that, one of the key aspects is, I believe everybody has an empathic ability because we're humans, unless there's, some outlier sort of mental, problem or mental illness that may stand in the way of your perception. But I believe we all have natural gifts of spirit that we can see, hear, and feel without logic. That our senses are a part of what makes us amazing creatures in the human world, also very complex creatures. I do feel like that, knowing what I know now, and all the classes and the things that I've studied, and, could read people very early on, what was going on with them, when somebody had just had a fight, when somebody wasn't going to be home, when somebody was lying, and I always kind of kept that to myself, And so as I've studied in school and worked with other people, I do feel like crossing over. I do feel like it heightened my perception ability because it opens a door to sort of like a frequency. It reminds you who your DNA is. And so I don't think you have to have a near-death experience to communicate with your loved ones. In fact, communicating with your loved ones or feeling the presence of angels, feeling those, beautiful light bodies from other spaces that we don't even have names for, that you're not alone. We aren't alone. And I do believe that that's, the spirit world, meaning loved ones and our guides. They want us to know that we're not alone, and they want us to feel that connection because I believe that they knew, or that there's an intelligence that knows being in the human form as a spiritual being is not the easiest experience, And so I always encourage people to, and remind people, you'll hear me talk about this when we're talking about after death, communication. It's open to everybody who's open to it. And it's even open to skeptics and people that don't believe that it can happen. And, the spirit world doesn't care if you believe. If they want to, bring healing to you, to bring an awareness or a message or a bit of a warning, like, turn left instead of right, that little nudge, they're going to do it out of love. Because by natural law, they can do no harm. And although we may be scared, or we may perceive something as uncomfortable. It's kind of like when people say, "Oh, I went to this person and they just said, I got a dark cloud over me." Yeah, it's your grandmother. That's who it is, right? Because your grandmother doesn't have color anymore. That doesn't mean it's a ooh, scary. It's a hallelujah. She's with me. That's kind of how we have to sort of turn the dime on how to receive that communication. And sometimes fear gets in the way, religion gets in the way, what other people think of us, get in the way. And it's something that, I plan to be in like the business world. Here's, my career path. I'm going to be in my own job. I'm going to go up and work in the VP's office. I'm going to work in the marketing. I'm going to do all this other stuff. Talking to spirit people and using my psychic senses was nowhere on my radar. But when you get the call, whether it's a near-death experience or the loss of a loved one, or you're in a space where you've had some, what I call synchronistic or too amazing to be coincidence experiences, that's the spirit world knocking on your door saying, hey, guess what? You got support, you have love, you have someone looking out over you. Be open to it so we can send that energy and that healing to you to bring you comfort.
So do you think then that all spiritual connection, the messages that come through the communication, that it is all positive?
So first of all, straight communication from spirit is always of love, period. By natural law, they can do no harm. Now, how we perceive it, us, like when it goes through our filter, that can be a problem. It's kind of like I had this lady one time, she called me. She said, my dog's in the closet and I'm pretty sure that there's a entity taking care of my dog and he won't come out of the closet and I'm worried about it. I said, well, have you taken the dog to the vet? Sometimes we have to have our common sense because the spirit world can't bring us any harm, but we can be startled by them. I know one time I went to a hotel. It was the last hotel in the town that was open. It was probably the last room, and that night I felt the presence of somebody I didn't know, and it startled me. It was unfamiliar. Was I a little scared? Yeah. But did they mean harm by that? No. Because by natural law, they can't bring harm to. We can always ask them to leave. And that's what I did. Super uncomfortable. I knew somebody was with me. I actually said out loud, I don't know who you are, but you got to go. Okay. And I said a little prayer around there. And that's kind of when I was new in my abilities. So I was I didn't have enough experience yet or knowledge about the spirit. So I was real sensitive to, vibrations that were unfamiliar. And, I went down to the bed and breakfast the next morning. And I said, there's something going up in the second floor. They go, oh, yeah, that's old so-and-so. This is his house. He stops by and visits people. He's on the other side. And I said, well, he can just go on to the other rooms because I don't need to say hello to him. And so what that did is it set me at ease. Number one, it let me know that I had nothing to be afraid of, that I handled that situation right. And so for any of your listeners that are new, you're kind of like, well, what if it freaks me out? Or what if, my hair raises? Or what if it's I feel somebody touching me? That's what they're meant to do. And, what I knew is this guy was a friendly man. The girl told me. And, and so he didn't come by and do any more visits, which was great. He probably went to the next person, but he would always check on his people, as they were checking into this bed and breakfast, when he was here on this side. So he kind of kept his job a little bit, just check on us. And so, it's those kind of situations that kind of make you afraid. Sometimes you're like, or the other one is, I'm making this up. It's too, this is all in my head. I'm sure of it. There's, I always tell folks, if you're making it up, you make up something different. Okay. It wouldn't be whatever you think you're making up. It would be, it's, that's the biggest problem with after death, communication, I believe is, and I love the way you said it, Christy, is you trusted your voice. You've learned to rely on that. You've learned that voice is guiding you within you. And that's very much about, that kind of confidence, that kind of belief in yourself kind of opens another doorway to the spirit world. And so, even after all these years, when I hear from my loved ones, it's not uncommon for me to go, wow, is that just a coincidence? I was just thinking about them. Of course it's the coincidence, because I just sent them a voicemail through my head. It said, I'm ready for a visit, so I'm, always, nobody really talks about this stuff. Right.
Yeah.
And
I know
it's super private. Like even people on my Facebook page, right? I always giggle because there's not a lot of engagement unless I'm doing live, because nobody wants their friends to know that they're looking at someone like, so everybody's like secretly woo-woo-y. They're like, woo. And so that's what's so amazing about your kind of podcast is opening that doorway to something that's not a mainstream conversation, helps people feel comforted and validated. And that's so much about the spirit world. When we know we have a loved one, when we know, that penny on the floor wasn't there when we went to bed, but now it is. And we know that's our dad, we know what we know. And so I know I got up on a little thing there, but I started in my little teaching realm.
That's right. I love that.
I always give people for this long, and I always want to dispel that, some of what TV is sensationalized, and, how message should come, and, what they don't, I just like to dispel the fear.
Yeah. Oh,
because there is nothing to fear when it comes to the spirit world, because they only come with love and with healing and evidence of the afterlife. That's why they come, for those things. Anything else, it's just a waste of time for them. They got too many other things to be worrying about. It's highly intelligent, thought form, soul form, energy, intelligence. It's the superior divine intelligence,
Yeah. Wow, that is super interesting. I'd like to come back to that if I remember about what you've just said. But to dispel the fear is so amazing, because like what you just said, and you have these Facebook groups, and yes, I want to create this conversation, create a space for the conversation. I'm that person who doesn't comment in Facebook groups, who doesn't get involved in the conversation about anything personal, because I like to keep my distance, so I'm that person. So I think that we've all got a bit of fear within us. I do get a lot of emails from people who've had experiences, which is how I ended up asking you to come on the show today, is because people have experiences which aren't pleasant. They aren't so friendly. I'm here talking about all the great things, and they definitely outweigh what people experience. But to get rid of that fear, that's a really beautiful concept for me, because, I've got my conditions, and I might come across as quite open, but I sort of think on the other side, I'm actually quite closed because I put conditions on everything. I guess my question is, even last night as I lay in bed, I did a little, I don't know whether you call it a prayer or a request or whatever, but I said, could I just have a nice dream? Could I have a visitation tonight? Could somebody come and just connect with me? That would be lovely. They didn't, and that's okay. But why do some people get, I don't know if visitation is quite the word, why do some people have experiences and other people don't?
That's such a, for the people that don't get it, the way they want it, or the way that maybe somebody else got the dream, they came in the dream, but they didn't get a dream. I know how much it hurts not to, you got somebody call me, telling them you dreamed about your loved one, right? Well, dreams aren't the only way. And that's what's, I guess, kind of the legacy of my work is I really want people to know that the spirit world can communicate with you. Sometimes you just have to get out of your own way, right? So there's a couple things that could stand in the way. Number one is grief. Remember the spirit, because typically people that have lost a loved one, sleeping, they're either sleeping so much or they're not at all, right? And so the spirit world, I always trust that the spirit world's intelligence is, they know more than we do, and they know the why, right? But what I also know is that if we make ourselves open and that we study about their language, signs, symbols, feelings, interpretations, being open to synchronicities, tapping into our own soul, we will feel the spirit world with us when they are there. How they come, when they come, who they come to, in what ways, right? So, for example, my dad, who's been passed, he's been in the rainbow world, over 20 years. Okay. I've probably dreamed about him less than 6 times in all that time. Okay. But I have felt him, and I have seen signs, and I've had amazing experiences with him, coming into my world, giving me that validation in weird ways. And, one of the best things, and this is such a, it's hard to surprise the medium, right? That's, it's hard to shock me. But, an example would be a few years ago, I was writing my book, and I was focusing a lot on my mom in the book, who had just recently passed. And so somewhere I was driving to the drugstore, and I said, Dad, and of course I said it out loud. Nobody was in the car with me. Dad, I haven't forgot you. I know I love you. I know you love me. By the way, I haven't heard from you either, that kind of thing. And I said, I'm just going to give you a sign. So instead of me waiting for him to give me a sign, I said, Dad, I'm going to give you a sign. I'm going to give you a number. And, I just need you to know you got it, like 10-4, good buddy, right? So I go to the Walgreens here, and I go in, get my stuff, and I'm drawn, and the car right in front of me, okay, parked right in front of me. I'm drawn to look over at the license plate. And I gave my dad the number 33, okay? And I said, Dad, I just need to know you're with me, and I need you to know I love you, and I need you to know I need to know you got this. So I'm going to give you a sign. Now, this is how we learn their communication. And I said, just let me know you got it. So within that 30 minutes, I'm at the store. I walk out. There's a license plate. Not only did the license plate have 33, but it had a J, which was his name.
Oh, wow.
So those are the kinds of things that people will, like, what it took for me to actually feel in my heart that I wanted to reach out to him was that him calling me, touching me, and then I felt I lost him and missed him. Was that me calling him because I missed him? See, I think it goes in sync, right?
Yeah.
I go to the store, I give him the sign, boom, 20 minutes later, after coming out of the store, there's a coincidence? I think not. With the car, with the letter of my dad's name. Was I looking for that? No, I was trying to get to my car without, dropping anything on the ground, which usually happens to me. So, it's one of those things that if you are somebody that is interested in communicating with your loved ones, not everybody is. Some people are at peace with that. Some people just want to know they have spirit guides, or they want to feel closer to God. It is all the spirit language. And so at some level, we can do our part in helping that communication. And the spirit world never fails. So it doesn't mean that they're not going to always come in a dream. They're going to come in, like, my guides use butterflies, not my loved ones, but my mother has a particular car. When I'm thinking about her and I see that car, they don't even make that car anymore. When I smell gardenias, I know that that's my grandmother. So sometimes we can do our part in learning because they want us to know that there's an afterlife, number one. And they know that there's pain. They want to help us. When you want, it's always what I say to others. Well, wouldn't you want to help your loved ones if they were struggling and you were okay in heaven? Wouldn't you want to let them know, hey, listen, I'm good. Live your life, go play the lottery, have fun, kiss somebody, I'll be here when you get here, wouldn't you want to do that too? And so, learning to be open, if your people are listening to this broadcast and your listeners, I commend them. They're already opening a little window in this kind of conversation. And, why do you want to hear from your loved ones, right? You want comfort that you're not alone. For me, I had a lot of regrets. I didn't get to say goodbye to my dad. He died of a heart attack unexpectedly after we had an argument, right? So there was all that, and what I know is that, my dad found his way, and it doesn't matter how long it has been since they passed. It can be 10 minutes or 10 years, right? I didn't actually feel or sense my dad until almost 10 years after he passed, So what I would say is that we all can get it. Number two, are we open for it? And three, are we open for how we get it? Even my brother, who's the most skeptic, I love my brother. He's a retired policeman, very logical. He looks at me and his eyes roll. Now he's gotten better as he's gotten older. But right before he was having surgery on his back, a major surgery, I was in the house. He goes, I don't know who's in this house, but somebody's in this house. It's my grandmother, of course. I was like, of course it's my grandmother. She loved you like your mom, I go, oh, that's just my mom. She, so I always speak my truth. Now I've gotten confident enough that even people that are non-believers, I'll just say, our loved ones want us to know they're there. And sometimes I'll take a limb and, I'll say, so-and-so is here for a reason. Because they don't ever waste their thoughts or their energy or their presence. And the good thing is that they don't give up on us. If we're not hearing them, they'll try another way.
So there's something that you said in there. And what I love is that you talked about giving your father a sign, because we all say, give me a sign, come and meet with me, show me, give me a sign. I have never heard it until you just said right then.
Oh, yeah.
Look, Dad, I'm going to give you a sign. So I'm going to show you that I'm still here and I'm still waiting for your messages and to connect with me. You walk out the door, there's the number plate, the letter J. And like you said, you were just going about your shopping. So what a cool concept. I love that. Is that something, I guess my question is, if we go and, I don't know, I don't want to set people up to then try and do that. And then what happens if we don't get a sign?
They will. They just have to know what it looks like. There's always a ring of, so first of all, that was super out of character for my dad. Okay. My dad is usually late to the show. Okay. So if I'm having a moment where I want to talk to him, I might as well leave my message 3 days early, because he's not Johnny on the spot like that. And he wasn't here on this side either. So, we have some of that stuff. The timing is what you're talking about. They will always respond, and they will respond. And you want to make it in a way that, what I'll say is that sometimes they're with us and we feel their presence. It's subtle. And we just know they're right there with us. Maybe when you're watching TV, all of a sudden you're like, man, I'm thinking about my loved one.
Yeah.
I'd say, breathe into that space a little closer. They're probably right next to you. And, I always tell people that are getting started with this is that the soul knows, okay? Because it's spirit to spirit communication, okay? Not after death, it's your spirit and their spirit. And so it's, everybody's getting on the right channel. 10-4, good buddy. Everybody's, I'm on channel 3, get on channel 3. Like, that's what we're doing as we go. And I would encourage your people, if you haven't heard from a loved one and you want to, I want you to think back. when in the last little bit have you kind of felt them like on the way when you're washing your dishes and all of a sudden you feel them, or you think of a memory, or you pull out their particular plate that they used to do, or you say something that they used to say and you feel like it just dropped in your mouth and you're like, where did that come from?
Yeah.
That's because their presence is with you. That gives you that opportunity. I have complete faith in the spirit world. They may come different than what your listeners want them to come, but they will come.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. It's good to know that they will come. How much do you think they are trying to connect with us? I know we spend a lot of time, well, I do in my world, and the people that I work with spend a lot of time trying to connect with them. Are they even bothered about trying to connect with us, or are they're in this great place on the other side doing their thing?
Well, first of all, it's never a bother. Remember, they have a purpose.
Yeah.
Okay. Their purpose is to help us heal. Okay. Their purpose, there needs to be a need, because the spirit world comes in a need, right? Could be a health crisis. Could be a child. Like my mother, when my son got married, everybody was, my brother, and my son is a little bit of a skeptic, And, I told him that day, of course, I was all emotional because my mother had passed and she had planned to, we were going to find ways for her to be at the wedding. And, I was kind of looking out for her all day. I was like, oh, Lord, she's not here. What the heck's going on? And then my son and my new daughter-in-law, after the wedding, they, the photographer takes them out and they get pictures and all that. My son coming back, Mom, Grammy was there. There was this butterfly following us around, So I didn't need the message. My son needed the message. You see how they're going to find a way to come. The spirit world loves a telephone game too. They love, like when they're like, oh, you won't believe what happened. I talked to this girl on the phone and I was thinking about my dad, and all of a sudden the lights went out, and so, there is a need, they're not going to come. Number one, they don't come on demand. At least they have, for me personally, in my mediumship, me personally with my losses, they don't always come on demand. When I'm doing readings for others and I'm, connecting to their loved ones and I'm working with them, it's been rare. I've done thousands of readings, and less than 3 that the spirit world hasn't been able to come in a way. And I really feel like it was because maybe that person needed something different in that experience. Doesn't mean that they weren't there.
Yeah.
So, keeping the expectations is, I always just keep it as an experiment. I'm going to try this out and keep going. And then, see what's open. Because the biggest thing that kind of gets in the way is, number one, we don't know how to stay in the moment. So I'd have to ask your listeners, hey, how good are you at staying in the moment? Because if you're, I have a saying, my friend used to tell me, is your head above your butt? I'd be like, what? She'd go, Jennifer, your head is way out there. It's not, I love that woman to death. She's in spirit too. She must be with me over the last 3 days. I've been seeing her name and it's not a usual name, right? This is another example. I've been seeing her name in different places, in places you wouldn't see them. And then when I saw them, not only did I just think, oh, is that her? I felt it in my heart. And so sometimes you can see and you have no connection, you don't have any feel, but then all of a sudden you get that feeling, that subtle feeling of warm connection, a sensation that something is tingling. And that, because the spirit world can only work with energy, sign symbols, vibration, and telepathy. Well, there is some physical mediumship, which is where, like, my sister, she's hilarious. Anytime, and I have 2 moms, so it might confuse folks. I have an adoptive mom and I have a birth mom. my biological sister and I, we met later in life. And she was she'd say, Jennifer, do you have the gift? I go, what are you talking about? Oh, yeah, I think I have that. Well, hers is different. Like in her house, she'll send me a text. She'll go, something's flying across the room here. Like pictures will fall off the wall. And I go, yeah, I just was talking about mom. And, it's funny because my mom comes to my sister differently than the way she comes to me.
Yeah.
You see, so it's not always the same. It's not always the same way. And, what I'd say is be open, ask again. They won't be offended, right?
Yeah.
Just try not to make too many demands, meaning I need you to come with a dog to the front door with a purple hat. So if you happen to have a dog to the front door, that's your message.
Yeah. Yeah, we do put a lot of conditions on it, a lot of requirements, don't we? Because we want that proof, I suppose.
Well, not just that. I have a friend of mine. I have one of my members in my spiritual growth mentoring group. She lost her son last year. He was a young man. And I was having a conversation with her. I said, even if Jake showed up at the front door, brought you flowers, manifested in his spirit, walked through the front door and said hello and sat on the couch, 3 months later, you'd be saying, did that really happen?
Exactly.
Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's always going to be a little bit of, unless you know what you know, And that's always what I encourage people is try to tune into your deeper sense of yourself. But obviously, if you've gone through grief, if you're right in the middle of pain, it's kind of harder because your vibration is a little dense. It's heavy. It's not as easy to be perceptive. It's one of the reasons I wrote my book. My new book is because, one of the things is I love helping people know they're not alone by their communications. And, I was going to jump into the 7 steps and how you, connect with your loved ones. But the real problem happens to be sometimes we're in a grief or we don't know what's possible or we haven't heard enough. And so we're almost ready, but we're not ready. And so there's some things that you can do ahead of time to, like you said, make yourself more available so that you are more perspective in messages. And sometimes it's our grief. Sometimes it's our guilt. Sometimes it's that we are in depression. Sometimes it's our anger. There's things that can keep us out of the realm of the ability to pick up the message. There is that. And so, but we, if your listeners are here, I promise you, they're going to pay more attention now and I'm a regular person, guys. I'm your next door neighbor. Okay. I've been, I got a good head on my shoulders and, you just can't make this stuff up. And, if you do, you'll feel it, that you're trying to make it happen.
Yeah, that resonates with me as well. Yeah. There's an interesting question that came up, a conversation we were having over in our VIP group. And the question that I was asking was, we were talking about after-death communication, people connecting with people, well, spirits connecting with this physical world. The question was, why do you think I hear I guess the comment so much of people are coming through, past loved ones are coming through to say, I'm okay. Don't worry about me. I'm okay. Why do you think that is? Is that part of the grief healing? Is that part of the process?
It is. Yeah, it's because even when I got the call about my mom, I just left her the day before. They call me at 5 a.m. and I'm a believer. What do? The first thing, they say, Mom died last night. First thing I do is go into the bathroom. I'm crying. I say, Mom, I can hear you. Let me know you're there. Let me know you made it. And, the next day there was some really amazing signs. Like, this is profound, but my mother and I used to always talk about, and it helps for listeners to hear how the spirit world comes. Okay. They're going to come where it's either easy and there's a ring of truth or there's familiar. So there was a conversation my mom and I used to have about ducks. My mother lived in Texas. I lived in Florida at the time. And so she would ask me every time I would go to see her, she'd say, well, how are your ducks? Because I had a pond in the back. And the week that she passed, I want to cry every time I even think of this.
Mm.
I was in Texas, she asked me, she goes, how's your ducks? I go, Mom, something's happened to those ducks. They don't come around anymore. I guess they don't like my pond. I guess they don't like the pond anymore. And the day after she passed, my friend and I were talking on the phone, and I'm looking out the window in the pond, and there are 3 ducks, and they're going in circles, like they're right in front of my window. And my mom's big dream was to be reunited with her 2 sisters.
Oh, whoa. Oh, I've got goosebumps. Oh, wow.
So it's those kind of things that, that if we're open to how they come.
Yeah.
And I just needed to, I think it is such a, is it, we're okay. I think that was your question.
Mm.
It's humble, yeah. I mean, we want to know that, number one, are you still there? That we can continue that relationship. Nothing will, I don't care how much after death communication you do, nothing will replace a hug, a kiss, or spending time with you.
Yeah.
Nothing will replace that.
Yeah,
you can
because
come
we're
close.
physical bodies.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so a lot of people, even after a few years, especially people that have lost children, we want to hear from them, but, and sometimes I have to have that conversation. They're thinking, well, why am I not over? Like, why am I not better? Well, it's because, yes, we can know that we can communicate, but we still have to come to terms with the loss and how it has affected us and how we want to move forward going on.
Totally. Wow, the ducks, that really impacted me. Now, you've got your book, A Healing Journey. Yeah. Tell us about that, because that's all about what you're talking about here, about dealing with grief and loss. And tell us about your book.
Yeah, so again, I wanted to share, teach people how to connect to their loved ones. And last year, I'd always felt called to write a book, but I just didn't think I had anything important to say. I was like, after I'm like, oh gosh, is this everybody, everybody talks about this. Why is mine special? Who's going to read that? And what I've learned is that people do love it and people need it. And, I wrote the book with the intention it was going to write another book, which was, what I'm writing next. But I wanted to really help the folks that were really newly in loss or had unresolved grief. Because I believe unresolved grief can contribute to depression. And sometimes hearing from my dad for 30 seconds on a phone call to a medium, 10 years of regret left my body.
Oh, wow.
Because I didn't get to say goodbye from him. You see what I mean?
Yeah.
That's kind of, so anyway, the book is, I felt like Spirit guided me through that book, but it is a journey it's a practical book. It's a book about stories, my stories, other stories on, opening the door to the communication, how to heal, which means, and it has 5 steps that I believe that if we apply some of those steps, it opens the door for being able to recover from the loss and really regaining the ability to rebuild our life where we actually feel joy again. That we feel alive and we feel, a part of it. But it's a really, I'm a how-to person because I am a literal, not just a woo-woo person, but I always feel like there's great, we do a little work, like there's a 21-day meditation journal. In here, there is 5 steps, which is, how to give yourself permission, how to rebuild, like how do you get out of bed and eat dinner and still take care of the family when you feel, those kinds of things. And I feel like it's a first step for people that feel stuck due to a loss, due to grief, whether it's with a loved one or just maybe you're retired and you just feel like you haven't got anything to give. Because, and that, a lot of people deal with that, that they've, that their value has changed because they're not getting paid to work. There's, there's great value in other things. So it's a great first step if you're, trying to move forward beyond the emotions and trying to get some solutions to help you recover.
Yeah. Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. I love how you bring the physical aspect, the everyday aspect into that spiritual part, the connection, getting messages, things like that. I know a lot of our listeners have experienced recent loss, recent grief, which is how they end up finding the podcast is looking for, I guess, asking that question, are they okay? Which is something which is really, I'm sort of just processing that quite heavily at the moment, that question of why do they tell us they're okay, which is a great thing to be, hearing that they are okay.
Through everything. I mean, that was the biggest thing. I just wanted to hear she made it. I'm like, did you make it? Because, I didn't, it's not one of those things where I got to sit by her bed and, we had a great visit. She was bedridden. We had a great visit. She called me the night before, and she had a little fever and she just got her eyes done. She was excited about her cataracts being removed. So it was unexpected, And, it's dying people or people that know that they're going to die. What's interesting is that week, if I had had the presence of mind at the time, she kept asking me kind of like life questions. How's so-and-so? And how's this so-and-so? And how's what's so-and-so? And, oh, you look good. And, whatever your physical, and, oh, I was dreaming about your dad the other day. She never talked about that. I had my little radar going, oh my God, spirit world is near. That means she's going to get to go soon. You know what I'm saying? So I always giggle about that. And,
isn't it interesting how in hindsight you can see that they were actually quite close and the things that they were saying, there's definitely indications that they're right at the time of leaving this world and preparing to pass over.
Well, and I don't even think she knew it. I think she was just going, oh no. I mean, if she did, I'd be surprised. She may, if I know my mom well enough to know, she would say something's going on with me, I mean, something's not right, and, but, because she just took her, her regular pain medicine and went to bed and didn't wake up.
Wow. Oh, what a way to go, I think. Wow.
Yeah, but relief from so much suffering. Yeah.
Exactly. And that's what we want, isn't it? Yeah. I'd love to continue that little piece of conversation there in our VIP group about whether people know they're going to die, because I've got some theories around this. Oh, yeah. But Jennifer, thank you so much for coming on and sharing. I'm still blown away. You've had the near-death experience. You've had this life of getting messages and being connected to the other side. You've made after-death communication sound very normal, sound very everyday, I think, which I guess in some ways it kind of is. Like, it's happening all the time. It's happening to me. It's happening around the place. I talk to people all the time, but we make it this out there concept that it's not a thing that happens every day. But from what I'm hearing from you, it is. It's just everyday life.
And I think some of that might be cultures, because, even in the Native American world, ancestral people that have gone before us, like there's a respect, there's a reverence to, our ancestors and our loved ones and those that have gone before us. And, they want to hear from their wise ones, And so I think that, depending on your culture, where you've grown up, the kinds of experiences you've had, what I know is the spirit world doesn't care about any of that. You open the door, you open your heart, they will open theirs.
That's beautiful, isn't it? I love it. Jennifer, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
This has been wonderful.
Thanks for joining me for another episode of the Let's Talk Near Death podcast. Don't forget to subscribe to stay updated with all of the events we have going on, and to visit www.letstalkneardeath.com to join the VIP community.